the middle of the week. This is a show about linking what happens in the political world with one keyword, one concept, so that you can grab that keyword and remember what is going to happen in the political arena. Mm-hmm. And today, what kind of word should we pick, Andrew?
Well, it's probably going to come from the healthcare sector. I won't pin you down yet until I tell you what I got on my radar today. The Hospital Authority Review Steering Committee is having their first meeting today. I think we talked before that there's going to be a major investigation into how we can overhaul the hospital authority, how it's structured, how it's run. You know, it's the first time since the 90s they've done a big review like this. So this meeting today, they're just going to be having an overlook, kind of an overview for the people in the committee of what the situation is, what the current problems are. So it's just setting the stage, as it were, for these guys. What's interesting is there were a couple of last-minute additions to the committee that I thought were interesting, especially given some of the things that you and I have talked about here before.
All right.
Do you remember previously I introduced you to the term M&M?
Oh, yes.
Morbidity and mortality?
Yeah.
Keeping track of, how often people die or catch secondary infections in hospitals. The two people that have been added to the committee kind of just before they start having their first meetings was a Dr. Kenneth Fu, who's part of the surgery department and a specialist in urology at Queen Mary. Okay? Urology, of course, very important for men. But it's also an area where when people get in catheters and things, there can be a lot of sources of secondary infections. The second person is a Mr. Pang, who is a nursing consultant and who specializes in wound care.
Wound care?
Wound care, yeah. So making sure that, your wounds are taken care of properly, cleaned, all these types of things. And that you ideally to avoid, so you heal faster, but also to avoid infection. And he's up at the Yanchai Hospital working on this. Kind of why did this hit my radar or strike me as a little bit unusual? Hong Kong is number one in many things, right, in the Western world. Things like economic competitiveness. Many people have praised our tax system, things like that. One of the things that Hong Kong is number one in many measures that is not so good is being a source of superbugs. Right, and I think people have heard a lot. There's a lot of overprescription of drugs, people not taking them properly, so we get drug-resistant versions of.
So we're number one in superbugs.
Infections here, yeah. We've been identified as number one in superbugs. There's suggestions that China could be worse than us, but nobody really knows because it's hard to get the stats out of there. But seeing two people put on this committee seems to me that there's some kind of a sense that. This is a problem for Hong Kong because, the thing about superbugs is once they get loose in a hospital where you've got sick people, people with depressed immune systems, people with open wounds or wounds being treated, this is when it starts spreading through the premises and you got all kinds of trouble.
Yep.
So I think that these two last-minute additions to this, steering committee is it's a little bit of an admission that there's a problem here. The problem is widely known, especially in medical circles, and I know they care. So.
But the key is. Of the whole healthcare system supervised by the hospital authority. Do you think within the system there are many bugs or there are a number of superbugs? How you treat them will be very different. If you are saying that there are a few superbugs within the hospital system, then you have to pinpoint the superbugs and try to cure them.
Of course.
Or kill them.
Of course.
Or get rid of them.
Yeah.
But if they have many bugs within the system, then we have to do it a very different way. Maybe we have to contain the situation or put the healthcare system on life support. So what's your take on that?
Well, my take on that, when doctors and medical historians are asked what has been the number one medical advancement in the history of man, washing your hands, proper hygiene. And this is what they're dealing with here. When you talk about the superbugs. Yes, you have to have a protocol for once they have arisen and been identified, they have to be dealt with. But ideally, you never get them in the first place. And that goes to, not hygiene in just washing your hands, but taking it up a couple of levels in terms of, how you have protocols, how you treat wounds, all these types of things. How doctors prescribe drugs, how patients do or don't take drugs. And this, I think, is what needs to be looked at. And so
you mean the whole system have some bad practices?
I think
or some bad habits.
Again, not measuring the M&M, you're never really clear. These kind of measurements that are standard in other places are not common practice here. I would hope that one of the things that would come out of this big review is that we start to get more rigorous about collecting those kind of statistics so we know where the problem spots are. And I hope that bringing these people to the committee is an admission of the problem. It's the first step, right? You got to admit you have a problem.
I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, if you have superbugs within the system, then you can pinpoint one or two person, and maybe you get rid of them or introduce new management and try to change it. But what you have just said is that if it is a system-wide problem, it means that we don't have superbugs within the system, but there are many holes or many wounds within the system. I'm using an analogy here, but if it is this case, then you need a cultural change. Only cultural change can make the system becomes better. It is not so much about killing the bugs, but actually improving the standards or improving the awareness, including the M&M figures. I mean that's a cultural change. That's a mindset change. Rather than you change one or two person. And I think with new members adding into the system, they might induce cultural changes.
Well, hopefully we'll see what Dr. Fu and Mr. Pang can do to help improve the situation.
All right, so keyword for today should be superbugs, but I don't want to use that word.
Okay.
Strange.
Yeah.
How about culture? I think
culture. All right.
Yeah, well, let's pick culture.
All right. Sounds good, Vincent.
Keyword. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.